Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. It is time for the Books That Make You show, and I am your host, Desiree Duffy. We're talking about books that make you rock and roll back to the 1950s and find out what it was really like to have a hard dog's night. Now, we often see the past through these nostalgic lenses. We fondly remember all the good things, but sometimes we forget the difficult times that we might have had as a nation, as a society. Take the 50s era of rock and roll, for example. While some of the most revolutionary and influential music was being made, there was a lot of turmoil during that decade as well. Yeah. Author, urban explorer, and rock and roller Rebecca Hendricks is back to tell us about the second book in the Hound Dogged series. It's called A Hard Dog's Night. I got to keep that straight, Rebecca. I keep wanting to regress into the actual titles of the song, but you play on the words so well. I love it. I love it. And now again, here you are transforming readers back to the 1950s. You're capturing that essence of a coming of age story and historical fiction, all against this backdrop of societal upheaval, musical revolution. Rebecca, it is so exciting to have you back on the show.
It's exciting to be here. Thank you, Desiree.
You bet. Okay, let's talk a little bit, because now this is the second book in the series, and you know we have these dueling bands, and we have this musical backdrop of rock and roll. Can we talk about the devil's music, as it was so called back then? Can you discuss how early rock and roll was rebellious and labeled the devil's music by so many?
Yeah, it was considered the devil's music because it came from so many different genres of music. Like you've got the blues, and you've got some, gospel music in there, and some country and western. Just kind of all came together, but those pieces added to it. But then it just had a really driving beat and had some a little bit of suggestive lyrics, and the kids were dancing in a different way than say was the norm back then. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, because it's different and it's maybe has this connotation behind it, then oh well, it must be the devil's music. Because even as far back as the blues was titled the devil's music as well, because the men were too busy going to the juke joints to want to go to church. And so it's like, well, then it's the devil's music that's making you do this. So
yeah,
so it just kind of carried over.
And it is interesting looking back now, because we think of the early days of rock and roll as being relatively tame, right?
Right,
but
yeah.
There was a lot of societal anxieties going on with the youth rebellions going on. And there was racial integration as well, which was, oh my. You want to talk about some of this cultural change that was happening at this time?
Yeah, because, back then in our nation's history, unfortunately, segregation was still a thing. And, I think a lot of it really was probably, was based in fear. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden we've been able to keep this group separate. And now all of a sudden, African Americans are making music that, Caucasians are wanting to listen to. And, it's making them more popular than maybe some people wanted them to be. So then they switched, to having other people record the music and stuff. So, yeah, but, the kids didn't care who was making the music, and they didn't mind dancing with other kids.
Yeah. They just wanted to have fun.
Yeah, they just wanted to have fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And you touched on it too. I think it was because of the fear people had, right? It was based in fear of losing control.
Yes, very much. Very much. I think so, because all of a sudden, the parents had a predictability about what the kids were going to be doing. And now all of a sudden that was, a part of it, but it wasn't the real reason. I mean, cars were all of a sudden a thing, and young kids were driving cars, which meant they could go out on dates and go, park somewhere or something, and I think they just kind of maybe just threw it in with all of that other stuff that they were already afraid of.
Yeah. I mean, and you're right. You're mentioning the cars, and you think of waitresses on roller skates and drive-ins. Rock and roll was really, it was that symbol of American culture and life.
Yeah.
And the impact it had on us as a society and on the characters in your book as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I want to ask a little bit more about the cultural controversies that were surrounding rock and roll. There was a real backlash against you mentioned it before, some of the dancing styles seen as being provocative, such as those that were even popularized by Elvis Presley, right?
Yes. Yes. Elvis was the first one. Not maybe the first one, but I think he was more in the limelight, if you will, because he was very expressive in his dance moves. I mean, the music just moved him, and he couldn't help, he just did his thing. And, it involved a lot of hip shaking and a lot of hip, moving and stuff like that. And they didn't like that so much because, some people didn't like it that much because it was suggestive. Or they felt like it was, because the girls would scream louder, of course, when he did that.
Yes, they would. I think even wasn't it the Ed Sullivan Show where he was basically censored?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they did get to the point where they just moved the camera up and only filmed him from like a certain point down.
They couldn't go below his waist, I think it was. We don't want to see that pelvis of Elvis's.
I think he did try to, kind of pull it in. But then he was like, you know what? Then I'm not being me. That's not me. That's not who I am. And so he was like, I'm just going to be who I am. And that, ended up being just fine, because he did, of course, he changed everything. He really did change everything. Because once he came on the scene, there was no stopping it then. It's like Pandora was out of the box, and they couldn't put... They wanted to snuff it out, and they tried. They banned it in several states and tried to push it back. But by then it was a thing.
Yeah. Could not put that back in the box, so to speak.
Yeah. And I kind of go into that with my third book a lot more, about trying to put Pandora back in the box.
Tell us about the terminology, rock and roll. What does the words, or what did they think the words rock and roll actually meant?
Well, it originally meant the movement of a boat, like it would kind of rock and roll, well, in the ocean there. But then it got to be another, like, especially in the blues context, that it was more about, making whoopee than...
Oh, it's that motion, right?
Yeah,
it's all motion, about the movement. It's
all about that motion movement. Yeah, the beat, makes you wiggle all over.
Well, yes, no wiggling around allowed. Yeah. No, stop that wiggling. And you touched on it too. I just wanted to circle back. Talking about some of the other artists of the time. You've had Chuck Berry, and you mentioned rhythm and blues and gospel, and how a lot of that music was basically appropriated at that time And in some ways, some of the artists back in the day weren't necessarily given their dues.
Right. Yeah, because one of the things was, well, let's get some, Caucasian artists to do this music, and then we can control. Well, there you go, the word control again.
Yeah.
We can control the words, maybe change them up a little bit and have it look more wholesome and sound more wholesome. Because
Yeah.
it's coming from a guy that looks like a cookie cutter image of the perfect American boy.
Exactly. Think of folks like Pat Boone, for
Pat Boone.
example. Yeah. Yeah. Poster
Yeah.
child for that. All right. Let's segue over and talk about storytelling, some of the themes that are in your books, as well as your very unique voice. Can you discuss how your writing focuses on stories that are relatable and characters that people can connect with?
Yeah, because my characters, I think, go through a lot of what we all do growing up. You're trying to find your way. You're trying to figure out who you are. Of course, trying to put up, or navigate the parental piece, and you're trying to find your boundaries, and just who you are as a person, and are you gonna what path you are going to follow with growing into adulthood.
And it's really a coming of age story. Both books are coming of age as the characters learn and grow. Why did you want to write coming of age?
Well, I guess the main reason is because I could really relate to it. And I think it's important to put out a positive message in today's world that, hey, it's been going on for a long time, and, you can survive it. And so you don't feel so alone, maybe, and you don't feel like, there's nobody out there that doesn't understand what you're going through. But a lot of older people like the book too, which is kind of cool, I think, because they, kind of takes them back. Oh.
Yeah. Well, and it's got that universal message. It happens to be set in the 1950s, but like all great coming of age stories and stories about youth and learning to grow and develop, it just resonates with the readers in so many ways. And like you mentioned, you have that message of hope and self-belief in oneself and perseverance. I'm curious about the interplay between the bands in the book. We've got the Hound Dogs versus the Dice. Can you set the stage and talk a little bit about the rivalry that's between them two, those two?
I just wanted to really create a story where, there's a lot of stories out there about, the battle of the bands thing, but I kind of wanted to go into it a little bit deeper by showing, here you've got this band on the outside who seems to have it all. They're on the uprise, they've got their act down, they're bringing in audiences, they're getting ready to make a record. It looks like they're going to have everything. And then you've got a band that's just starting out, trying to find their way. They don't even know really what their direction is yet. And what they're doing, because they're all on a different page in the beginning. So, to have like a friendship where one of the characters is a very talented musician and auditions for that band that has it all. It's like, here's your chance to be this. This is your chance to, escalate and everything and become a star. But then it's like, then there's, when he finally does join the Dice, it's like finding out that maybe all that glitters isn't gold. Just all the hardships he faces just being a part of that band. And gosh, I really miss being with my friends. So it's that choice of, do I commit to this, this band that I'm not I'm feeling stifled, my creativity stifled, even my movements, down to my very movements. I can't even move like I want to move. Everything's dictated to where I could go and be free to do my thing.
Yeah. And we've all felt that. That's the thing, that universal message, like we were talking about, that comes through in your writing when you're developing your characters. They're so relatable. Can you explain, Rebecca, the process of creating your multifaceted, complex characters and the challenges that you face as a writer?
Well, I really wanted to create a cast of characters that each had a little something, and that was relatable in a certain way. So like you've got the one character who wants to play guitar so bad, wants to be really good at it, but he can't seem to make his fingers go where they need to be quick enough, because it's muscle movement, but he's just struggling with, okay, I do this for the G, I do this for the E. And, so you've got him. Then you've got the guy who wants to be, he doesn't want to work at it. I just want to be talented, and I want the stardom. I want it all. And then you've got the guy who wants to kind of play around with it and isn't really into it, and just how they can, by creating that, you can like have them play off each other. Like each one has this thing they're facing, but they can help each other along the path because of those differences. And so, yeah, that's how I create them, because I try to think about what's the best way to have a group of characters that are diverse enough that you wouldn't even put together, because you got James, who's going to college, and he was playing guitar at one point, but he kind of stopped doing it because his mother passed away. Now he's back in it. So now what does that mean for him? So that's what, and then the dice are just a group of narcissists.
And we've all encountered folks like that, haven't we?
But they all grow too.
Yeah. It really is. It's like a found family type of a situation, because they find each other, even though you've got all these wonderful backstory lines too. There's a little bit of romance in there, and there's a lot going on. And then again, you're doing this, it's all reflecting that broader the conflicts of the era that you're depicting. Can you talk a little bit about how that interplay happens? Like how did you, let's put it this way, from a brass tacks point of view, how did you map out your story? Did you create outlines, or are you putting things into some kind of a Bible? How did you kind of put all of this together?
Well, I'm a pantser. And most of it was in my head. And I mean, even though I had an idea of where I wanted the story to go, it did kind of develop on its own. I know that sounds weird, but it did. Because I had a certain direction that things were going, because I had written it so far back. So I thought, oh, I'll just, but I'm like, wait a second, what if this happened? What would that would depict more the day? And then I'm like, wow, by having a show that blows up, then you're going into a riot and all this other stuff. And then it causes this ban on rock and roll. But, it starts to develop into, rock and roll really wasn't the reason why this incident happened. So then you have characters like trying to maneuver that piece, because now it's up against being banned. Yeah. So you've got society fighting against the kids, and they feel like they don't have a voice because they're kids.
Yeah. So much great interaction, interplay there. And it's really brilliant the way that you've written the story. And whether you're a plotter or a pantser, you're an explorer. And I want to segue into your urban explorations, because you are an urban explorer. What is that for people who don't know? What is urban exploration?
Well, basically, you're going out and you're exploring and looking at abandoned places that have been, people have just left and abandoned, and they're vacant.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them involve history, and you just kind of wonder who lived there, and a lot of them do have history, because if you are photographing near a town at all, you always have people that'll come out and they'll tell you, and some of them know the history of it because they've been there for a long time. That's really interesting, because once you start hearing the history of the place, it even becomes more interesting and more memorable and things like that. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, do you have any interesting anecdotes or stories about some of your times exploring?
Yeah, I mean, one time we got stuck in the middle of Mexico. We were out on an abandoned road, well, not a less used road, trying to see some towns that were small and kind of off the beaten path, but we ended up sliding off and high centering the car, and
Yikes.
It was very scary.
But you made it. You made it back alive. That's the good thing. Do you have any do's and don'ts, tips, or advice for people that are like, ooh, urban exploration, that sounds like fun. I think I'm just going to go out and try it myself.
Don't go by yourself. I mean, that really is my biggest one. I mean, I know a lot of people don't do. A lot of people do. And I think you're okay doing that as long as you don't want to get too deep into it. If you really just want to take a picture from the road, I think you're fine. But if you want to go in, actually try to explore the property itself, then you're getting into the sketchy piece. And you have to be careful. And having somebody there with you, I think, is helpful, because you never know what you're going to come up against. And if you're out there by yourself, always be prepared. You never know if you fall, or, always make sure somebody knows where you're at.
Yeah.
So if they, and tell them you're going to call them at a certain time.
I think it's important too to just remember this might be somebody, or it is somebody's property in a lot of cases, and being respectful of that.
Yeah. I mean, there are some areas that, like some ghost towns, where they actually have people there because it's part of a society, preservation, historical preservation.
Sure.
And those places are fun because those, people are very helpful, and you're free to roam. But like you said, yeah, you have to watch out for the trespassing signs and private property and like electric fences.
Yeah. You don't want to accidentally hit one of those. Those can hurt.
Yeah. and sometimes they will film you. I mean, I don't know how quick or how much they can tell by filming you, but they will. They have cameras.
Yeah. I love them. There's some shows, especially in Europe, where they're exploring the chateaus and castles that have been abandoned. And in some cases, they still have furniture inside. In some cases, you're looking at it going, that's worth some bucks. But the ones that I watch are very respectful. They don't give, for example, the exact location. That's not shared because they don't want a bunch of people coming in and looting the place, graffiti, that kind of thing either.
Right. And it's all about go in and take pictures and leave only footprints.
Yeah.
So, you're not defacing the property, and you're not taking things and looting. You're just enjoying the beauty and the art behind it.
Yeah.
So you're just there to see, not to take.
Exactly. And for you, it's serving as an inspiration for some of your writing too. I'm curious, do you have any advice for aspiring writers? What would you like to encourage them to do?
Always remember your why. Why did you start this journey? what is your driving force? Because it gets hard. The longer you get into it, because you think, oh, I'm going to have this great, moment, this windfall. And I mean, I don't care how much you tell yourself, no, I don't believe that. You kind of do, because I went through that. I'm like, oh, I don't. But then there was a time in there where I was like frustrated and feeling, down and stuff. But that's when you really got to buckle down and work through it and hang in there until you find your tribe, until you find the people that are going to help you and believe the same things you do.
Yeah. Talk more about talk more about finding your tribe. I love that advice.
I love it too. It's just finding where you fit in, because the whole doubt thing and the whole imposter syndrome goes through your head, like, oh, I'm not that good, oh, I got a low review or blah blah blah. But there really you just have to find where you fit in, where you can find your audience and the people that are going to appreciate your work and that you can speak to. But just never give up. And I mean, here I am saying, and it's hard. I mean, I can sit here and say all this advice, but doing it is another thing. It's very hard, but it's worth it. It's been worth it. So,
yeah, it's being an artist. It's the life of an artist, right? As a writer, you're a creative and you're bearing your soul. It's like you're bleeding on the page for other people. And that is the most painful thing in the world to do. But if it fulfills you inside and you're able to make those connections and express yourself, I don't know. I think that makes it all worth it.
Yeah, that review that you get where somebody actually gets it and they say, oh, that's what it's all about. That's what's so worth it, when you find that person that writes that review or that fan that sends you a message and says, gosh, I really, really liked your story. I liked your characters. That's what makes it all worthwhile.
Well, Rebecca, your characters, your stories, the Hound Dogged series, everything is absolutely amazing. It's riveting. It's really a page turner. And I recommend it highly for anybody who's looking for, whether it's coming of age, if they like YA, if they like historical fiction, the 1950s, rock and roll. I mean, you cover so many different beats, so to speak. It really is something that is unique and special, and it has a little bit of something for everybody. Can you tell folks where they can go to find out more about you and, of course, find your books?
Yeah, so the book's available on Amazon, both ebook and paperback. I also have a website. It's RebeccaHendricksAuthor.com, and I'm also on both Instagram and Facebook under Rebecca Hendricks Author.
Love it. Love it. Now, right now, we've got 2 books in the series, but there's more coming soon too, right? We can look forward to more. So if people love series, this is definitely something to dig into.
Yeah. I'm working on book 3 right now, actually. So, yeah.
Love it. Love it. And I love your rock and roll background back there.
Thank you.
That is so hip and groovy. Is that the right terminology?
Yeah.
Did I get that
right? I like it.
Rebecca Hendricks, the author of Hound Dogged Night and Hound Dogged, basically the Hound Dogged series. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Books That Make You show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Desiree. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
You bet. You bet. And thank you, everybody, for joining us as well. You can find out more about us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, as well as YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. Make sure you never miss an interview with great authors like Rebecca Hendricks. We also bring you the Book Fest, so you can check out past episodes of the Book Fest that happens every spring and fall. You can find out more about that at thebookfest.com. And don't forget to subscribe for the Books That Make You Webby award-winning newsletter. We send that out once a month, keeping you up to date on news and information. We have lots of fun giveaways and all sorts of bookish fun. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.